Previously on Mort's Garage.
I think he's pretty serious.
Don't do anything crazy.
I told him if I didn't receive the full amount by your next video, there would be consequences.
No, please! Please stop! Please! Let's begin. I'm here with the man formerly known as Intern. We've upgraded him to manager status. So everybody, welcome Noah.
What's up?
Yes. Noah is joining us on the game hunt. He had said in advance today that he wanted some very specific things. Noah, what are you looking for?
Oddworld, Stranger's Wrath, and Battletoads.
Yes, and a Super Nintendo, you mentioned. Yeah. Hopefully today we will find one and find lots of other great things as well. Cameraman Mike's joining us.
Not quite sure where everybody's at yet.
John's joining us.
I've been looking for vintage toys a lot lately, actually. Digital cameras are always on my list. Okay. If I could find those, it usually makes the trip like a success.
Yeah. Because how many hours did it take you to get here? About 7?
Yes.
Crazy fun things happened today that show just how interesting this market will continue to be or will not be anymore. Just keep watching.
I got Castlevania Bloodline and a 101.
Shut up. Just shut up.
And a stack of manuals.
Yeah, shut up. You're making me jealous. Our first scoop of the morning is this incredible Sega Genesis lot.
I'm asking $70 for the whole Sega.
The whole lot?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, it's already a great deal at the price the vendor is asking, but when you bundle in everything together, it's an amazing deal. There's a lot of the games here that are sports games, but actually good sports games. These ones are actually really great sports games that should belong in any console collector's library, whether you have them for Super Nintendo or Sega Genesis. Tecmo Super Bowl. Haven't played this version of the game, but I have it on the Super Nintendo. And then sort of brother, cousin, sister, friend to the NBA Jam series is College Slam. It's the same concept, general idea. You know what else is like NBA Jam? NBA Jam. I remember coming home from school and at school being like, when can I come home and play NBA Jam? I loved this game. I played it so much. The Tournament Edition one is great. If you have a Super Nintendo or a Sega Genesis, you have to get NBA Jam Tournament Edition. It is the definitive way, I think, to play this era of NBA Jam. What's interesting to me about the Sega Genesis library is that there's a lot of games in it that I just don't have very much familiarity with. One of those is this game here, Generations Lost. This is not a common title that I at least see very much of. It looks to be some kind of like a side-scrolling action platforming style game, but I really don't know. What is this game about? Let me know in the comments below. That would be great. So 7 cartridges only and 12 games in the box. Not all of them have the manual, plus the console with the power and the AV cables and the controllers. Noah, how do you feel about that as our first find of the morning? Great. 2 bags of Sega Genesis stuff. Now Noah does want the Super Nintendo, so Sega Genesis is cool, but we're still gonna keep our eyes open and look for more because there's a whole day of game hunting in front of us. I may end up keeping this console and collect Genesis now. I don't know, maybe that's a bad idea. Thank you so much to the vendor for the incredible deal. This is a wonderful way to start out the morning. What's up, dog?
What's going on, guy?
Yo.
How are you?
Good, let's switch this up.
All right.
Sega's done this wonderful job of, in every console generation, having big compilations of their most sort of classic games. Your Altered Beasts, Streets of Rage, all the Sonics, everything like that. So all the main stuff that you'd want to play, Phantasy Star, it's on one of the many, many compilations from PS2 all the way through to current console generations, and the mini consoles themselves are wonderful ways to play Sega Genesis games. So I've never felt the need to really go hard on the Sega Genesis library, especially when there's so many cross-platform games that I can play on the Super Nintendo. I think if I was like a really big shoot-'em-up fan, which I'm not really, I would probably go a little more on the Sega Genesis and maybe collect for the console, but ultimately I'm very satisfied with the compilations, the mini consoles, and the Super Nintendo. And I know it's really like, what did you grow up with, the Super Nintendo or the Genesis? But that actually speaks to something really important, which is this whole conversation around nostalgia And when will it die? The enjoyment of retro video games seems predominantly dependent upon the time at which the player first discovered the game. For example, if you grew up with a Nintendo Entertainment System, you probably have a fond love for the Nintendo Entertainment System games. Is there enough power in the memories of the Sega Genesis or the GameCube or whatever console you grew up with that the quality of the games that is there goes beyond the nostalgia? Take the Atari, for example. It's not a console that I grew up with, and today I have very little desire to play the games, and when I do play the games, I just don't enjoy them very much. I think of it a lot like silent films. While I definitely respect and appreciate what they did and many of the stories that they told, and certainly there are many masterpieces in their own right, I definitely don't prefer that format for watching a movie or even enjoy it the way I do other films that are made today. My brother, for example, when he sees NES games, he tries them because of their legendary status, but he just cannot get into them the same way that I can because I grew up with them, which is what makes it interesting then as a game collector and a game hunter to go somewhere with someone like Noah who is younger but sees value in and loves all the old retro stuff. So how much will younger generations appreciate these older games if they didn't grow up with them in the first place? I think it's a compelling question. It made me think, how many games really are timeless? Well, there's probably a lot of reasons why video games can become timeless. The two biggest factors as I see it are mechanics and fun. When I say good mechanics, I mean things like tight controls, clarity in the philosophy of the design, you know what you're doing and how to do it, for example, in the game, and when you press buttons, they work, and there's a response, the hitboxes all make sense, etc. And finally, there's a technical element to the game that is communicated well, such as a sense of identity around the music or the graphical presentation. It doesn't have to be great graphics, but the art design is clear and specific. But perhaps the most important thing about what makes a video game timeless is that it's fun to play. So with all that being said, here's a few video games that I would nominate as being timeless. When people think of video games, this one almost always comes to mind first. Have you ever considered how the very first screens of this game are perfect game design? You can stomp on a Goomba, that you can power up, and that you can break the blocks and get coins. That tells you just about everything you need to know to get through most of the rest of the game. The game set the standard for what it means to be a platformer. You go from left to right, you get to the end of the level, and you move on to the next one. But it's filled with Easter eggs and all kinds of other things that make it a ton of fun to play. But all of that would be meaningless if the game didn't control well. And this game controls beautifully. If you mess up and die in Super Mario Brothers, it's not because the controls are bad or there's something unfair about the game, it's because you just didn't play it very good. Tetris isn't just a great puzzle game, it is the puzzle game. Even today at the Tetris World Championships, they're using this version of the game. Just about every puzzle game ever made borrows something from Tetris's design. It's no wonder this game has been made on everything from calculators to the most modern game consoles, but no matter what they do to the variations of the game and how they try to change up the formula, the original core formula of the game is quite literally perfect. Blades of Steel may not be the most accurate representation of the sport of hockey, but it's pretty darn great on the Nintendo Entertainment System. Though gamers were wowed by this game, especially by the fight mechanics in 1988 when the game was released, it still plays just as fun today as a one-on-one arcade sports title. Blades of Steel is a good game to play in single player, but as a multiplayer arcade sports game, it's just as fun today as it was back then. While Mega Man is a good game in its own right, the sequel, Mega Man 2, bested it in nearly every way. When you understand the game's non-linear design, you can whip through the levels really quickly, but it's a ton of fun to play because the game is just well made. The platforming and shooting is great in its own right, but it's taking on the new power-ups from the bosses that you defeat that make the games always interesting to play, and being able to switch between those different power-ups is a total blast. While many would say that Mega Man X is the best game in the entire series, I still think Mega Man 2 has a timeless quality about it, nostalgia or not. Those are some of the games that I would nominate from the NES era. What ones would you nominate? And for those of you who grew up with the Sega Master System, let us know in the comments below which ones we cannot miss. Let's keep hunting.
Graham! What's up?
Always good to see my buddy Graham, and he has some great PS1 titles for us.
Sepultura. Graham's hooking it up today. We are getting Star Wars Demolition on PS1 for $10 and Tomb Raider 3 for $10.
Star Wars Demolition is essentially Twisted Metal, but with a Star Wars license. The game is actually built with the Vigilante 8 engine, and Vigilante 8 versus Twisted Metal, back in that time period, they were pretty competitive in terms of what the games offered to players.
That's a deal, my friends.
I personally never really got into vehicular combat as a genre, as a gameplay style, because I just really enjoyed more of the traditional racing format, especially arcade racers like the San Francisco Rush series and later Burnout.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
But at the same time, there's something about a good, solid vehicular combat game that can be a ton of fun, especially in multiplayer. There was never an addictive element to vehicular combat because the shooting, you want it to be like a first-person shooter, at least I do, and the driving, I wanted to race around stuff, but there's never a point where the two things synthesized in a way that was a lot of fun to me.
Just fantastic.
So in terms of the subject matter of collecting stuff and having it come back and be collectibles, one of those things that has become that way is the VHS market, which is really interesting. People are even like grading VHSs, which might be old news to most people watching this channel, but when I tell that to people who don't collect, you can literally see like their brains fall out of their skull.
John's going to get a VHS right now of a movie I can't say the name of on my channel. John, you grabbed it?
Yeah.
It's one that we're gonna make a bet on.
One of the other reasons that I think VHS is so collectible, especially for horror, is there is something about the lower grade in terms of lower resolution, the warbly audio, that actually enhances certain elements of horror, not only in obscuring the special effects, because the cleaner those pictures are, the more it reveals the problems of them. The blood color is wrong, or, you know, you can see sort of how fake and obvious some of the elements are. That stuff gets obscured and blended in a little bit more on lower resolutions.
Can you list it right now? Let's list it right now.
I want to know if it's going to sell in that amount of time, or if I'm crazy to think that the horror stuff is going nuts on the resale market.
I'm guessing it's probably going to sell.
I feel like I'm gonna get some shade for this.
We're testing how hot the VHS market is.
There you go. Okay.
We're just having fun.
One of the things that's interesting is how the genre of horror seems to outlast whatever generation it comes from. Think of video games, Silent Hill, Resident Evil, of the obscure sort of stuff, like obscure. I've just never been a huge horror fan, if at all. Especially slasher films are not my thing.
If you find trashy old horror stuff, there's a good chance that people want it on VHS.
Particularly, I love the movie The Exorcism of Emily Rose. The reason I like this movie is because it's Scott Derrickson, who went on to make some really classic films. One of the things that I liked that he did with The Exorcism of Emily Rose was he made it a courtroom drama that is a battle of worldviews. So the state, which is supposed to be agnostic, is prosecuting the Catholic Church. The prosecutor leading the charge is a Methodist. The Catholic Church is being defended by an agnostic attorney. And so it's interesting to see how everyone's worldviews get challenged and how they go, no, Emily Rose wasn't dealing with possession. She was dealing with psychiatric and psychological issues, and she wasn't having demons, infect her. What she was experiencing instead was psychological breaks that she needed the right medication for. And it's just a fascinating way to do horror, because then it shows you each thing that she experiences in the film from either narrative, and then it leaves it to you as the audience to decide, what do you think? It might have been easy to pass this one over when it came out because it's like, oh, it's not The Exorcist, it's PG-13, blah, blah, blah. And there's a couple of pretty good jump scares in there as well.
Hi.
But in terms of thoughtfulness, I think it's one worth checking out if you haven't watched it. I loved it. As this episode continues, we'll keep checking in with John to see if the item actually sells.
I listed it for $139, and it would be, that's like kind of high,
But it's in like amazing condition.
it's in really good condition.
And also, some collectibles are worth it for people to get like a really nice copy condition one. I don't know. Some of my favorite games, I only want the highest quality version of it I can, and I'm willing to pay up for it. Does anyone know what this Axiom Verge pin is from? Let me know in the comments. Hey, and I just want to remind you should like the video and subscribe. It's the best decision you'll make today. Unless you're making more important decisions. It's still going to rank up at least in your top 3 decisions of the day. Almost fell. Let me know in the comments where it ranks in your decisions. Thank you. Street Fighter II is the ultimate template of the one-on-one fighting game. The 6-button controls, relative speed of the game, variety of roster of characters, and the well-balanced gameplay all combine to make one of the greatest fighting games ever made. I think it says quite a lot when the controls that were learned in Street Fighter II and Street Fighter II Turbo and beyond have really been replicated and just slightly refined in every generation going forward. You can still do a lot of the same special moves that you learned here in modern games. And not just modern Capcom fighting games, but most fighting games stole the template that this game created and have just tried to make their own variations of it. But nothing beats the original. Well, sequel to the original. Back in the 90s, Donkey Kong Country truly blew our minds with its graphics and presentation. But once you picked up the controller, you realized it was more than just a pretty face. Donkey Kong Country 2 elevated everything from the original game to create one of the best, if not the best, platformers on the Super Nintendo. In terms of platformers, Super Mario World could easily be on this list in terms of timeless games, but there's something about the personality and charm of Donkey Kong Country 2 that makes it absolutely worth playing today, whether you grew up with it or not. I know, another hockey game. While die-hard hockey fans certainly loved having the NHL license on this game, it was the gameplay that still elevated above anything else. Perhaps the greatest thing about NHL 94 is it's just a fun game. It should be noted that even today's most modern NHL games have an NHL 94 control mode built into them because they just got the controls and the fluidity of the gameplay just right. Even though the graphical fidelity of modern hockey games is mind-blowing, you can still go back to the gameplay of this one at any age, at any time, and have a great experience. Before I wrap up this segment and get back to the hunt, I need your help. This is the era where JRPGs, I think, started to have bona fide classics. And on the Super Nintendo, many would say that between Chrono Trigger, Earthbound, and Final Fantasy III, among maybe even others, those are some of the best RPGs ever made and are timeless even today. But I didn't play a lot of those JRPGs. I'd love to hear from you which JRPGs you think are timeless in the comments below. And Sega Genesis fans, fill us in. I know I'm missing a lot here. All right. This is where things get interesting.
Got a car coming.
You want to know?
Noah wants to get his very first Super Nintendo console, and we want to see it happen, but you just don't know what you're going to find at the swap meet.
How much is the Nintendo?
As it so happens, we're walking through, and sitting out on the edge of a table is a boxed Super Nintendo.
Let me ask them split it with that, but probably $125.
Okay.
It would be amazing to find a Super Nintendo at a good price. But a boxed console? This is pretty exciting.
I'll do it. $125.
Noah is not looking to buy this to resell this. He just loves retro video games. And this is the kind of thing that you dream about when you go to a swap meet, is to find a great deal on something really special. Not just the console, although that's great in and of itself, but to get it in box? The Lord heard our request this morning.
And it comes with the games too?
Yeah.
Cool. It's perfect. It's yours, dude. You want this?
You can have it. I mean,
Noah, this you said you wanted a Super Nintendo, right? This is for you, bro.
thanks.
Yeah. All right, let's do it. We came here today looking for a Super Nintendo, so this is perfect.
We should see if we can ask or manifest some more
Yeah, let's go. Dude, you're stoked.
into the morning, because that was an incredible find.
Do you want all the games too?
Yeah, sure. I'll probably do it.
Okay.
$125 for a boxed console, and with several games, all of which are high-quality Super Nintendo games. This was just a no-brainer, no haggle, let's go.
Where's the rolly cart?
As a collector, getting your favorite games is one thing, but to get them complete in the box is another. And I think most of us who collect want to get like one of the main consoles that we collect for. You want to get at least one of those complete in the box. However, what makes this so special is we're at the swap meet hunting, and this wasn't planned. This wasn't a deal from someone else. This was just out at a table. And it's so cool that today in 2024, you can still find deals like this out there. And I'm just so appreciative that the vendor made this happen. You made us so happy. Thank you for hooking it up. This made our morning, absolutely.
Noah, how do you feel?
I feel great.
You just got a complete in-box Super Nintendo with a couple of great games, brand new for your collection.
Yeah, that's great. I love the box.
Dude, that's awesome. Normally they're way more beat up. Nice job.
Thanks.
All right, say that again. What are you hoping to find today?
Loose copy of Earthbound.
Let's go. All right, Mike, what do you think? Can we do
I
this?
think all you gotta do is speak it into the universe.
Let's go. We're speaking in the universe.
Let's do it.
We want a loose copy of Earthbound for Noah for cheap. We're not going to flip it. We want it for a guy who loves
retro games.
And we're not done either. In fact, we got to find out how John's doing with this VHS.
It's been about 20 minutes,
Yeah.
maybe 30, and we've got 2 watchers on it already.
Okay.
And 5 views.
Wow.
Oh, that's a pretty good ratio.
And a Gen 1 transformer.
Jetfire.
Wow. This is exciting because we're gonna have dual. I can do like cut between 2 angles on this shot. See, like right now we're walking, and we'll do my camera and then your camera. Look at the production value just escalating here on Mort's Garage.
I know.
Look at, you're elevating our game today, bro. I just scored a sealed copy of Uncharted 4 and Horizon Forbidden West. I don't have this game yet. I'm very excited to play this.
I originally bought the big collector's edition, but then realized very quickly that it's just going to take up a lot more space than I have or want.
I loved the first game, and I heard this is more of the same, which is a good thing to me.
The first Horizon is one that I'll sometimes go back to and play, and I'll get really into the gameplay loop of it, and then I'll get bored and put it away, and then I'll go back and just keep on playing.
Go Aloy.
It's a series that I really enjoy, but it's not one like God of War where I'm like, I just have to keep playing and find out what happens next.
Jeez.
That was cool.
What a freaking morning, man.
Uncharted 4 should have been one of the greatest games of all time until you get to the Jeep open world levels, at which point the game just becomes so frustratingly unfun. It was a great story until that point. Still a good game though.
So I collect Goosebumps. I'm going for the first like 40 again, or
Yeah.
something like that. I don't, whatever like the kind of first run was.
Yeah.
And then this is, I've never seen this, but I think I had this when I was a kid.
Sitting out at this booth, we find a power pad, but then there's a box of consoles as well. John and I go back and forth on it, and we decide to go in on the lot and get it because it's worth the risk. But it is a risk. One of the things about buying consoles and all of this stuff at swap meets, at garage sales, is you really don't know what you're going to end up with. In most cases, the overwhelming majority of cases, things are fine. But there are enough cases that there is some risk involved. I'd say like 80% of the time I'm usually in a pretty good territory, or at worst it's like a minor fix that I can do on my own. However, there is still a good amount of times where a controller, a handheld console doesn't work. So even though this is a great deal and the seller made it as good a deal as it could possibly be, this lot has a lot of risk that goes along with it. To quell our concerns, the seller showed us video of the consoles working. However, some stuff actually did not work in the way that we thought that it did. Now let me be clear, I'm not about to go blame the seller or say that he was being deceptive or any of that kind of stuff. It was a bummer that it didn't work the way that I thought that it would. However, I would still take that risk 10 times out of 10 because the price was just so good. Thankfully, a lot of retro game shops are really good at fixing NES consoles. They're not terribly difficult to fix. They will either do stuff with the current pins to make them tighter, or they'll change out the 72-pin connector altogether, and usually that's all the fix that it needs and it's all good. Would you have taken the risk on these consoles? Let me know in the comments below. The birth of 3D in video games is the awkward middle schooler in the history of video game gameplay experiences. Of course, my voice cracks like a middle schooler's. While many aspects of 3D game design would start here and be refined to perfection in current generations, so much of the stuff that we started with here was in its infancy. 3D platformers were all the rage thanks to Super Mario 64. But I think Banjo-Kazooie is just a better game. Not only is the level design great, but the characters and the charm of this game are so well written that they're still laugh out loud funny even today. Now this might be cheating a little bit, but I think the one thing that really holds this game back is the note system. In the game, there's a bunch of different notes that you have to collect in order to complete every challenge in the game. Unfortunately, if you died in the N64 version, all the notes would reset and you'd have to start over in each individual level. That could be incredibly frustrating. But on the Xbox 360 version, they changed that aspect of the game design, so if you collected the notes, you always had them, and if you died, you wouldn't have to go recollect those notes again. The moveset that the game introduced made a lot of logical sense as an evolution up from what Super Mario 64 gave us in the first place. One of the things that I love about Banjo-Kazooie is you can play the games and the worlds in the games for quite a bit of time, or you can play in short bursts and still have a really great experience. In terms of Rare's catalog on the N64, I think this game has probably held up the best. Whether you played on the PS1, the N64, the Sega Dreamcast, or the original Xbox, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 is still a 10 out of 10 gameplay experience. Though games like Skate would come along and truly innovate with their control systems, there's something about the way that Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 plays that People could imitate but just never get down exactly the way that this game does. It's the introduction of the manual mechanic that takes this one over the top. You could theoretically play through the entire level without ever falling off of your board and rack up the highest scores you can imagine. Though small by today's standards, the game's levels are still a lot of fun to explore, and I would argue that the different things that you can do in the levels was really inventive and cleverly done. When 3D was introduced into video games, many different genres struggled to adapt. But one genre that I think actually benefited from 3D was the racing genre. And no game better represents this than R4 Ridge Racer Type 4. This version of the game comes with not only the game, but the Jog-On controller, which I've never really used, but I'm such a fan of this game that I had to have this special edition. While many gamers were wowed by Gran Turismo 1 and 2, I think there's something so iconic about Ridge Racer Type 4. A lot of the tracks have been used and reused in various Ridge Racer games throughout the series' lifespan, but there's something about the way that the gameplay comes together in this that's a ton of fun to play from an arcade perspective, but also just from a straight gameplay perspective. Once you get used to the power slide mechanic, this one gets really tough to put down. The game has a really nice progression of speed and challenges that make it more and more fun as you play along through the campaign that makes you want to just do one more race. Last but not least is the game to usher in the feature of rumble controls, Star Fox 64. Yes, the original Star Fox was a ton of fun back in the 90s when it came out. Going back to it today is really tough. But I think even by today's standards, Star Fox 64 is an almost perfect game. Many players can experience it right now on the Nintendo Switch, and it's actually a blast to play with the Pro Controller. Let me get the worst thing about Star Fox 64 out of the way. The frame rate in a couple of the levels in this game makes it almost impossible to play. I'm thinking of you, Submarine Level. But in general, the design of this game is outstanding. If you complete certain challenges, you can change the pathway through which you play through the game and experience a different game every time you play. This made the game a ton of fun, so even though you could complete the game relatively quickly, you'd want to go back and play it again, but try and see what the other ways are to unlock the different levels. But it's the way that the game just sticks to being a shooter that makes it so fun. Broadly speaking, Star Fox 64 had two gameplay styles. One was to get from point A to point B. The other was called All Range Mode, where players would have to defeat the enemy in a confined space. For some reason, Nintendo's experimented a lot with this franchise rather than sticking to what makes it great. Even in the most recent versions, it's the levels where you're in the ship that are the most fun to play. I would love to see Nintendo go back to a 3D flight style game the way that they did with Star Fox 64 on the Nintendo Switch or really any other console in the upcoming future. I hope they don't take the Wii U's reception as an indication of how fans feel about the series. Thanks to its awesome gameplay and wonderful design, Star Fox 64 is a timeless game. There's so many other games on these consoles and so many other consoles that many would say are timeless, but I just don't know. Let me know and let everyone know what are the best, most timeless games that whether or not you grew up with them, they're still great experiences today, and the comments below. We have an update on the VHS.
It's sold.
John did it. Oh my gosh. Dude, we were here within, how long, an hour?
Yeah, pretty much.
1 hour and your video is sold. We're speechless for this morning. We've so far gotten 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 consoles, a 9th one complete in box for the Super Nintendo, plus a bunch of just great games. You know what you're gonna get at the swap meet in the morning? Speechless, absolutely speechless. How much for the Nintendo, for all of it, really?
All the Nintendo games?
Yeah.
How many are there?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm interested in like 3 or 4 of them, but if it's a bundle deal, I'll do them all, you know?
$50 for all of them. Take them all.
50 for all of them. Okay, and then what about...
2 for $5 on the Xbox.
Let's see. Oh, I need a Super Nintendo controller, actually. Can you do 40 on the games instead of 50?
Honestly, I was selling them 10 apiece.
Okay, I hear you. I hear you.
Game Boy Micro for...
Oh, cool. Yeah, how much is this?
You want to take everything in that little bag for $5?
Sure. Okay, well, definitely this. Definitely this.
You guys bought some stuff from us last time, right?
Yeah, John did. I've bought stuff from you before. I bought DSs and Game Boys. So I know you got it at 40 or 50. The best I can do on this on the lot is 40, and then whatever your prices are on this stuff.
Can you do 45 on that?
45?
Yeah.
Let's do it. 45, 55.
Great choices.
Oh yeah.
This NES bundle was a great price. I ended up keeping this game Seacross. It's just one of these weird NES games that's worth giving a try to just because I don't see it. Even if it's like a relatively inexpensive game, if I haven't played it before, especially in physical form, I'm gonna get it and I'm gonna play it. If you played Seacross, let me know what your thoughts are on the game in the comments below.
Yeah. Need that. Thanks, gentlemen. Mike yesterday was saying, because we went to swap me yesterday, hey, do you want me to bring the cart? I was like, yeah, I'll just have the backpack. We'll be fine.
Yeah.
We've needed the cart.
We've needed the cart since I got here.
What a day. What a day. We already have to empty it, and Who knows if we'll fill it again?
Yeah. We still have half a swap meet to go,
We
right?
still have half a swap meet to go. We've unloaded the first round of things. We've only got about 45 minutes. Let's fill her up again.
My sister walked out of Return of the Jedi in 1984, and I was 4 years old and stayed.
And you never saw her again.
Yep. She couldn't handle Jabba the Hutt. It grossed her out too much. She was 9.
My daughters are 9 and that's their favorite movie.
I really appreciate you leaving comments. I read all of them and I respond to almost all of them. It's so fun. It's one of my favorite things about all of this is to have this little community around all of this stuff. So thank you for making comments and being a part of the videos in that way. I appreciate you.
This is one of my favorite sellers here at the swap meet.
I love this seller. I've bought from him many times before.
$40 for this Xbox 360 with 2 controllers is a phenomenal price. Very excited. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And this Xbox 360 bundle is killer, especially with the way that the Xbox 360 is really growing in terms of popularity right now among collectors. Finding a good console in good condition is going to be something that I'm going to be interested in doing. Although I will say that at the end of this episode, I have enough consoles to go around for quite a long time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, guys.
As always, appreciate you.
I was really excited to find these extremely clean condition copies of Game Boy games.
Nice little Game Boy pickup. We've got Gladius Nemesis, I believe? No, just Nemesis. Hey, this is for my collection to play. Double Dragon, I just want to try on the Game Boy. Castlevania Adventure, and Fist of the North Star.
The one that I'm most interested in trying out is the Fist of the North Star. The reason is not that I'm a huge fan of the anime by any stretch. I'd actually never watched an episode of it, but I really enjoyed the PS4 game, Fist of the North Star, quite a bit. The game just looks interesting. I think fighting games applied to the Game Boy have a really challenging proposition, which is that they have to be reasonably fast, and then in addition to being reasonably fast, they have to make it work as a fighting game with only 2 buttons.
He's got them marked at 12 each. I did 10 each on these.
I don't know if the Fist of the North Star is any fun quite yet. I haven't played it yet, but it's one that I am interested in trying. There are a couple of fighting games that I love for the Game Boy and the Game Gear. One is the Power Rangers fighting game on the Game Gear. I played that a bunch. But the other one is this one here, Power Quest on the original Game Boy. This is one that works reasonably well. It moves at a reasonable enough speed. It's also fairly uncommon. It's not going to replace your love for like Street Fighter or anything like that, but as just an interesting Game Boy game, I actually, in playing this game, really enjoy it. What's your favorite fighting game for the Game Boy or the Game Gear? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to learn more about it.
$15 for all these. Sweet.
Lots of random controllers and power supplies, always helpful, especially with those consoles that we got already this morning. Awesome deal on these Nintendo Switch games.
100 your best on this?
Yeah.
Okay.
However, the one I'm probably most excited about is this one right here, Minecraft Dungeons. This was recommended to me by my good friend Seth. He said this is one that he loves to play with his kids. It's a bit like Diablo, but with the Minecraft skin.
$100 for all these Switch games.
My kids don't really play Minecraft, so hopefully they'll still enjoy it regardless.
Last chance to see what's here. John says that there is a booth that has some $5 games. I'm gonna see if any of those stand out to me. But other than that, this has been one of the most impressive hauls of the year. I think the big winner today is Noah with that Super Nintendo grab, complete in box. Yeah. John found stuff, Mike found stuff, we all found stuff. So last aisle. Let's see.
Lots of random games just out on the floor at this booth.
Gotta have some knack in your life. How much are these games?
The bigger box is in 10. The small box is in 5.
I might try and go for like a little bit of a bundle here.
Is that $10 for this one?
I think he said 5. Yeah.
It was another beautiful day at the swap meet, made all the more beautiful by that box Super Nintendo find. I am so glad that Noah got hooked up on an incredible deal. This was a great morning. But that manual, I'm not trying to drag this out, I promise you that, but I am kind of trying to drag this out. The reason why is because this is just so much fun, and I don't want the party to stop, but I know that we're getting closer. In fact, I'm more than halfway through what I'm paying the mysterious individual for the manual. I'm excited to see this story conclude. I'm excited to see this thing finish up, but in a weird sort of a way, I'm really going to miss it as well. As silly as it seems, I don't know, it's like, it's just a manual, but it something that's just been one of the most fun things in exploring all of these topics. I don't know when I get that manual how things are going to shift on the channel, what the focus is going to be. And I like that that's going to push the creativity and the storytelling in a way that hopefully keeps your interest. I'd love to know what you enjoy most about the channel and see some of that feedback as I kind of think about what's next for here and beyond when it comes to enjoying, collecting, and having fun when it comes to video games. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.